Hello there, today we're going to look at some more simple sentences, but these are a little bit different. They're still made up of three parts, but the third part is not an object. When you say something nice about a person, you pay them a compliment. In these sentences, we have a compliment instead of an object. The compliment tells you something about the subject. Look, I found an example in my book. Rob is sleeping. Sue is sleeping. Ben is sleeping. The compliment is sleeping tells you what Rob, Sue and Ben are doing. Here are three subject, verb, complement sentences. Now the compliment doesn't always need to be nice. Have a look at these. The baby is ill. The witch is ugly. The apples are sour. They're certainly not saying nice things, but they do tell us something about the subject. We know that the baby is ill, and that the witch is ugly, and that the apples are sour. Of course, sentences like this can also say nice things, real compliments like, you are pretty, she is funny, he is clever. All these sentences have a subject, the baby, the witch, the apples, you, she, he, and they all have a verb. But do you notice something different about these verbs? Is, were, are. Now, we said that verbs are doing words. They tell you what people are or things are doing. But these are being words. They tell you what people or things are. They're very important verbs and we use them all the time. So let's find out a little bit more about them. Here they are, the being words. They all belong to the same family. They're all part of the to be family. Let's have a look at them. Is, am, was, were, are. They're all verbs, and I've put them all on blue card, and I'm going to put them in a pile there. Now I also have some orange cards, and these are subject cards, and some yellow complement cards. Let's see if we can make some sentences. I'm going to take one card from each pile and see what we come up with. So subject first. Judy. Judy is green. Judy is green. Well, that's a sentence, isn't it? But it's a bit strange. I wonder why Judy is green. Maybe she's been eating some green apples. But it is a sentence. Let's try another one. I am hungry. I am hungry. That's a good sentence, isn't it? Let's try another. They was late. They was late. Now that's a sentence too, but I'm not sure it's quite right. We have to be quite careful with the to be family. We have to make some choices. When we're talking about things that happened in the past, we have to choose between was and were. This sentence says, they was late. Now if I change the was for were, it says they were late. Well, they both make sense. We can understand what they mean, but when we're writing, we need to be sure to use the right one. Well, I could just tell you which to use, but I think we should do some research. I've got some books here, and I've found some examples. The gang were in the club hut, looking at the rain across Sandy Bay. No one was on the beach. It was too wet and windy. But there was one good thing. It was snug and fun up in the club hut. Well, it looks like we should use they were. And were goes with you when there is more than one person or thing. The gang were in the club hut. But when the subject is I, or he, or she, or the name of one person or thing, then we should use was. No one was on the beach. Now that all sounds quite complicated, so I think I should go to the board and write it down to help us remember. Right, we have two columns, a was column and a were column. And here we have some subjects to put in the correct column. I, he, she, the cats, Jim, they, and the tree. Well, I goes in the was column, and so does he and she. But what about the cats? There's more than one cat, and we said that if the subject was more than one person or thing, we should use were. So the cats goes here. And Jim? Well, there's only one Jim, so he goes in the was column. They goes with were. Let's look at the last one, shall we? The tree. Just one tree, so that goes in the was column. The tree was. Right, let's have a look at what we've got. In the was column, we have I, he, she, Jim, and the tree. And in the were column, we have the cats and they. I think we can find a rule here. I, he, she, Jim, and the tree are all just one thing or person, but the cats and they are more than one. So the rule must be that we use was when we are speaking or writing about one person or thing. We use were when we are speaking or writing about more than one person or thing. There's one more thing to remember. When we use the word you, it can mean just one person. You came to my house for tea. But it can also mean more than one person. I want to take you all to the zoo. Oh dear, what do we do when you is the subject of the sentence? Do we use was or were? I did tell you earlier, we use were. We always use were, so let's put you in our table. There, you goes in the were column. Right, let's go over to the table and see how good your memory is. I've got some sentences here. Some of them will be right and some of them will be wrong. We need to find the ones that are wrong and correct them. We was hoping to see the film. Do the subject and the verb agree? Well, the subject is we and the verb is was. Do they go together? We is more than one person, isn't it? And the rule says to use were if the subject is more than one person. So this should be were. We were hoping to see the film. Let's have a look at the next one. Were you able to see the match? Now, this is the subject, you. Do you remember we always use were with you? So this sentence is right, isn't it? Were you able to see the match? What about the next one? She was so busy she forgot to do the shopping. She is the subject here, and she is one person. So we should use the word was. So this sentence should be, she was so busy she forgot to do the shopping. One more. He was lucky to win the prize. That sounds okay, doesn't it? He is just one person, so we use the word was. He was lucky to win the prize. Now I want to look a bit more at these being verbs. Let's have a look at those. There. Am, is, and are. Now, am, is, and are also being words. Was and were are used when we talk about the past. But is and are used when we're talking about right now, the present. And we have another word, am. Let's have a look at them. The tree is full of apples. Well, we have one tree, so we use the word is. If we have more than one tree, we should use are, like this. The trees are full of apples. The same rule applies to you, whether the subject is just one person or thing or lots of people or things. We always use the word are. Shall we try some? The stars, something bright tonight. Shall we put in am, is, or are? The stars am bright tonight. That doesn't sound right, does it? The stars is bright tonight? That's not right either, is it? What about the stars are bright tonight? Now that does sound okay, doesn't it? There's more than one star, so we should use are. The stars are bright tonight. Let's try another one. I, something, very lucky. What should we use here? Am, is, or are? I think the only thing we can put in here is am, isn't it? I am very lucky. What about the next one? This, something, my favourite storybook. Now there's only one storybook, so I think we should use is, don't you? This is my favourite storybook. And one more. You, something, wearing the wrong hat. Well, we must remember the rule for you here. We always use are. You are wearing the wrong hat. There's such a lot to remember. I think we need to put these new words into a table. Let's go back to the board. I'm going to give my table the headings 1 and more than one. So in the 1 column, we will have I am, he is, she is, and it is. And in the more than one column, we'll have we are and they are. And of course, you are. I like this table better than the first one I made. I think we should add was and were to the table. If there's just one, we use was. And for more than one, and when we say you, we always use were. There, I think this table will be very useful. So that's what we call subject-verb agreement, and we've looked at this using the being words. When we speak, we don't always follow these rules, but when we write, it is important to use them. You can do more practice on this by doing the exercises in your books. But until next time, goodbye. Hello again. I've been reading my storybook and I've noticed that some short sentences are joined together to make a longer sentence. Let me show you. The waves got bigger and the wind got stronger as the little fishing boat crashed up and down in the sea. Well, the story could have said, the waves got bigger. The wind got stronger as the little fishing boat crashed up and down in the sea. Sometimes it's more interesting to join two short sentences together to make a longer one. And that's what we're going to look at in this lesson, joining sentences together to make a longer and more interesting one. Okay, here are two sentences. The sun was shining. It was very hot. How could we join these together? Well, one way to join sentences is to use the word and. The sun was shining and it was very hot. Well, that's still a sentence. It makes perfect sense, but it's longer. There are two ideas joined together. So can we join any two sentences together with and? Well, what if my second sentence was, my hat is green? Can I join these two sentences with and? The sun was shining and my hat is green. Now that sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? I mean, what has the fact that my hat is green got to do with the sun shining? Nothing at all. It sounds odd because the ideas in the sentences are about very different subjects. The sun and my hat. So we can't just join any two sentences together with and. The sentence we make still has to make sense. Let's go over to the board and try some out. It was very dark. I could not find my way home. What does that become? It was very dark and I could not find my way home. Well, that sounds okay. It makes sense. You got lost in the dark. Now, what about this one? She felt ill. She didn't go to school. Put an and in here and it says, she felt ill and she didn't go to school. Well, that's okay too. She stayed at home because she felt ill. He won the race and I had the flu. No, I don't think so. These two ideas just don't belong together, do they? They should be separate sentences. How about the train arrived? We got into a carriage. What does that become? It becomes the train arrived and we got into a carriage. Well, yes, we can use and here. It works just fine. So, is and the only word we can use to join sentences? Well, let's go back to our very first two sentences again. Here they are. The sun was shining. It was very hot. Now, you expect to feel warm when the sun is shining, so you can use the word and to join the two sentences together, and it makes complete sense. The sun was shining and it was very hot. Now let's change our second sentence. This time we'll have the sun was shining, it was cold. Well, you could say The sun was shining and it was cold. The ideas do go together and the new sentence does make sense, but it's not quite what you would expect. So there's another joining word we could use. The word but. The sun was shining, but it was cold. That sounds much better, doesn't it? It makes more sense. You don't expect to feel cold when the sun shines, but it is possible. So the word but is a better link word here. Let's look at some more sentences and see if we can use but to join them this time. I was late. I managed to catch the bus. Well, if I was late, I would expect to miss the bus, wouldn't I? I think we should put but in here because catching the bus was unexpected. I was late, but I managed to catch the bus. Yes, that sounds right, doesn't it? Now, how about she was hot, she put on her coat. Well, if you were hot, would you put on your coat? No, you wouldn't. So but will work here too. She was hot, but she put on her coat. Shall we look at another? I had my tea. The wind was cold. Well, I certainly wouldn't expect the wind to be cold because I'd had my tea, so this is unexpected. But can we put a but here? Let's see. I had my tea, but the wind was cold. That just doesn't make sense at all, does it? I don't think we should join these two sentences with and or but. So we can't just join any two sentences with and or but. The sentence we make must make sense. Let's have a look at some more sentences over at the table. I have some sentences here on cards, and the word and the word but. Let's see which word is best to link these sentences. The waves were high. I decided to go sailing anyway. And or but. Well, if the waves were high, you probably wouldn't go sailing. If you use the word but, it makes sense. The waves were high, but I decided to go sailing anyway. A good sentence, but maybe not a good decision. Let's try another one. My sister was ill. I looked after her. And or but. Well, you'd expect that you would need to look after her if she was ill. So, and would be the right word here. My sister was ill and I looked after her. What about this one? The shop was closed. I went home. And or but. I think and here, don't you? The shop was closed and I went home. No point in standing outside the shop if it's closed. Now, what about trying 3 sentences? I planted some seeds. I watered them regularly. They did not grow. Well, I think we can use and but here. Let's see. I planted some seeds and I watered them regularly. But they did not grow. That's 3 sentences joined now using the linking words and but. Just a minute though, there is something wrong with that sentence. Can you see what it is? we've been concentrating so hard on joining the sentences, we've forgotten the first rule of a sentence. A sentence must start with a capital letter and end with a full stop. Well, our new sentence does start with a capital letter and does end with a full stop. But I don't think we should have this capital letter here, should we? There, that's better. Now I want to look at some sentences where the end is missing. Here's the first one. It was an interesting film and... How do you think this might end? Well, we know we have to use the word and, so it's something expected. How about, it was an interesting film and I enjoyed it very much? What if we used but instead? It was an interesting film, but... Well, this time we need to say something rather unexpected. So how about, it was an interesting film, but I just didn't like it? Well, that still makes complete sense, doesn't it? What about this one? The cat fell asleep on my bed and... How about, the cat fell asleep on my bed and I didn't move her? One last one. I forgot to do my homework, but... Well, we might expect our teacher not to be very pleased. But we have the word but. So let's try, I forgot to do my homework, but my teacher told me not to worry. Well, that's all for now. Keep practicing, won't you? And good luck with your exercises where you have to decide whether to use and or but. Goodbye.